Hi, my name is David Schomer, and I want to welcome you to my second espresso training video. The first time out, we took a good look at cafe latte art. Milk texturing, steaming, pouring a beautiful cafe latte. This time, we're going to look closely at the techniques of the barista. Exactly what are we doing on the bar to make the espresso sweet while we work? Before we get started, it's useful to know a little bit about the background. How did we gather this information? In 1988, I started a business with my wife and business partner, Geneva Sullivan. We started as one espresso cart on the corner of Broadway and Thomas. But I was kind of interested in doing a good cup, and I knew that I could not learn much in the United States. I'd always read that the espresso in northern Italy was the sweetest in the world. So off I went. I had two research trips in 1989 and 1991. I sampled espresso, interviewed baristas, and took a lot of photographs from Naples through Trieste, probably 400 different espresso bars. And I felt like I was getting a pretty good sense of what northern Italian espresso could be, what the roasts looked like from city to city. But the espresso that I found there, at best, was inoffensive and smooth, always thick. But to my uneducated palate, it simply lacked one thing: coffee flavor. I just wanted coffee to taste exactly like fresh ground coffee smells, and I still do. So I came back and sort of developed my mission statement to research and develop each factor affecting espresso coffee until I could improve that and go on to the next factor and improve that. And after 9 years, what's astonishing to me is that we've made our greatest progress only in the final year by isolating brewing water temperature as the final factor to control, to make espresso that looks like the espresso you're looking at now. Really, it's only during the last year, as we became closer and closer to a perfectly repeatable brewing water temperature, that we saw this beautiful red-brown color emerge throughout the entire espresso brewing cycle. We have a flavor, a butter caramel in the finish of the coffee that we never had before this year, and we have a roasty nuttiness that balances with that. Really, we're very close to tasting a coffee that's just as good as the ground coffee smells. But to achieve a result like this is highly technical. So I want to describe exactly what you're going to learn in this video today. We're going to look at the dosing technique, which for me is defined as grinding the coffee, transporting it into the coffee brewing basket, measuring it repeatably, perfectly, and distributing it for packing. Of course, we're going to look at packing technique. Ergonometrically, what does your hand look like when it's perfect and you won't get an occupational injury? We're going to look at what's best for the coffee. Moving into extraction rate, we're going to look at the way the coffee looks when it's at its peak flavor. How does it come out of the machine? Where does your shot cutoff point get? And this is a very sensitive decision each barista makes with each shot. We're going to move right into adjusting the grind. Changing the grind is the way that you change your extraction rate. After that, we'll look at machine cleaning techniques. What am I doing on the bar to keep the machine clean as I work, and how do I put my machine to bed at night? Finally, temperature surfing. We're going to look at how you manipulate an espresso machine as you work to narrow the range of brewing water temperature variation. So let's take a look. Go to the espresso machine.
Espresso dosing, leveling technique.
So the first thing that we're going to look at is dosing the coffee, which to me means grinding, getting the coffee from the grinder into the coffee basket, distributing it perfectly evenly with my finger, and measuring it at the same time. So let's take a look at how it looks. Very important to dry the basket. We'll cover that more in packing. I'm making every effort to grind just the coffee that I need. Bringing it out of the coffee grinder.
Because I'm grinding by the cup, I must measure the coffee manually with my finger. But during this action we call distribution, I'm also crushing out any lumps and channels that may have occurred during grinding.
Making a perfectly distributed and perfectly measured dose every time by eye, by leveling it. I'm going to pack carefully. Okay, here's a trick you can do with any machine in the world. Take the dry packed coffee in your portafilter, put it into your group head tightly, as if you were going to brew it. Now, before brewing, just take it out, look at it, and see if the dry coffee has been impacted by the underside of the screen or the dispersion screw. If it has, you're using too much coffee. And I'll tell you why. ground coffee expands during brewing. During this process of extracting the flavor oils, the coffee is swelling up. It needs room to swell up. If it is crushed against the screen, you don't have an even dispersion of hot water across the top. So you need a little room for the crema to develop and the coffee to expand. When you're done brewing the shot, take a look and see up underneath if the coffee has crushed onto the screen, the wet coffee now. Also, if your wet coffee is contacting your screen, you're probably using a little bit too much coffee. So here is a diagram showing a coffee basket with loose ground coffee fresh from the grinder. Grinding by the cup is the only way to preserve all of coffee's aromas.
So here is a diagram showing the loose ground coffee fresh out of the grinder. It's a little bit misleading, however, because it's not even as the diagram shows. Ground coffee is adhesive, and the grinder impeller will compress it into little lumps that also form channels. So the distribution of the ground coffee becomes the critical step in packing. I first filled the low spot, and then you'll see me going back and forth. Let's look at it again. First, I fill the low spot that occurred from the doser. Then I compress from 6 o'clock to 12, from 12 to 6, back to the middle. Then from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and out, giving me an even distribution before packing.
Back to the diagram, we see the slight bowl shape, and more importantly, we see that the distribution, the coffee's perfectly even. There's no density difference from left to right to prepare for packing. After packing, when the pressurized hot water is forced onto it at 125 pounds of pressure, it doesn't have any choice but to ooze through evenly, pulling out all of the flavors and aromas. If the barista is hasty while distributing the coffee and levels the coffee from left to right as the arrow indicates, the density will be different before packing. It's the back and forth motion that assures a perfectly even density before packing. So, in this case, after packing, although it looks good to the human eye, the water knows the difference. The pressurized water takes a path of least resistance. So, the coffee on the right-hand side of your screen never contributes flavor to the cup. The coffee on the left is over-extracted, leading to a thin and bitter coffee.
Espresso packing technique.
So the next thing that we'll look at in detail is espresso packing technique. And I tell you, there's a lot of hidden finesse. I can have experienced baristas next to my newcomers. It looks like they're doing the exact same thing with the packer, but the coffee knows the difference. I can tell you, the newcomer's coffee will be white and thin within about a half an ounce. The experienced guy's getting a full 2 ounces of the red-brown crema that you've seen. The difference is in levelness and the details of how they're holding and operating their packer. We'll look at some of that in close-up detail. But first I want to show you the grip, the ergonometrics of the situation. How can you pack coffee with 30 or 40 pounds on your packer day in, day out, making hundreds of shots without carpal tunnel syndrome or any other problems? I tell you, there's only one grip that we've seen in 9 years that works, and this is it. The elbow, the wrist, and the packer form one perfect line of force. I can do this. My great baristas, Lisa Parsons, Amy Vanderbeck, have been doing this exact same procedure for years and years, hundreds of shots a day, without any tendon problems. It's because the fingers are partially supporting the packer's hitting the meat part of my hand, it's not supported by my wrist. This is wrong. Anything like this is wrong. You can't get away with any grip over time except this. So that's what's good for the human body. Now let's take a close look at packing technique in terms of coffee quality. The first thing you see me doing is to dry the basket. We do this with each and every shot before we pack it. The reason is to accent the adhesion between the packed coffee and the basket.
Over the years, my experienced baristas tend to get the distribution angle wrong. In other words, if you look at me, I'm going straight from 6 up to 12. Back to the middle with a little pile, then from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, which forms an X pattern. They tend to drift, and the two arms start to drift away from a 90-degree angle, the two arms of the distribution. That will cause a failure. Then we settle the coffee. Then I pack it. I come in with 30 to 40 pounds of pressure, twist to release, tap, Come back in with my full 40 pounds, polish with about 20. I wipe the rim so the coffee doesn't get up in the gasket.
So the first time that my packer contacts the coffee, I am not pushing down with 40 pounds of force. I am more concerned with being extremely level so that I don't disturb the even distribution that I've set up already. Then I'm going to twist to release the packer from the top of the coffee without pulling up a chunk. I tap to dislodge loose coffee from the side of the basket. One caution, if I tap too hard or excessively, I can break the seal between the coffee and the side of the basket, so tap with just the force that you need to dislodge loose coffee from the side of the basket. Then I pack again, applying the full 40 pounds straight down. I polish by twisting my packer, but I'm using less pressure, 15 to 20 pounds. Here's what it looks like on a scale. Pack with 40, polish with 20. Now, the reason that I'm packing with 40 pounds is because if I pack softly and my water hits the top of the coffee with 125 pounds of force, it can literally blast a pit in it, creating a path of least resistance, and that means thin and bitter espresso coffee coming out the bottom. So in review, we've seen that packing has to be exactly level, 30 to 40 pounds. It has to have a nice polished stroke to present an even resistance to pressurized water. In addition, you've got to be very careful to provide a good adhesion between the coffee and the side of the basket. But I must say that packing is one of the things that gives us the very most trouble still at Espresso Vivace. The only way that we know how to do it to get a good espresso is to pack by hand.
Brewing time and shot cutoff.
In making espresso, we're very concerned with the rate of water flow through the packed coffee. This corresponds to roughly a 25-second pour to get to your target volume, whatever it may be. In the traditions of Italy, ristretto, restricted pour, you're looking at a double shot being maybe 1 3/4 ounces. You're adjusting your grind to get there in 25 to 30 seconds. But you train your barista not to stare at a watch. You train them to watch their coffee. They're looking for that silky, hanging pour. So this indicates that they're getting most of the flavor, leaving behind the compounds that don't taste so good. It is a matter of experience. Now for shot volume, between 1 3/4 ounce, your minimum double shot ristretto, to maybe a 3-ounce lungo, you would have a whole world of flavor differences. It's up to you, the bar owner, whatever blend you have, to choose exactly how you want your coffee to taste. Experiment with different shot volumes. 1 3/4 ounces you'll find tastes completely different than 2 ounces, provided all your factors are in your control. And so you experiment with this, but you train your baristas to be very diligent, watch the pour, control the pour by adjusting the grind. That's the next section we'll look at, adjusting the grind.
Adjusting the grind.
So the well-trained barista, watching his pour or her pour very carefully for the ideal extraction rate that you've seen in this video, will no doubt notice that it changes all the time. The reason that the extraction rate changes is the ground coffee is hygroscopic. It absorbs or expels water into the surrounding air very quickly during grinding and packing. If it's more humid, the coffee starts to slow down and a more coarse grind is needed. If it becomes dry, and these changes occur very quickly around the grinding station all the time, if it becomes dry, you need a little bit finer grind in order to keep the same extraction rate. So the barista, properly trained, is adjusting his or her grind really up to 100 times per shift. It's not uncommon. It's very much like tuning a wooden violin outdoors. There's constant little changes that the instrument is going through. There's constant little changes that the espresso coffee is going through. And this knob is your control knob. Again, a little bit finer, slows down the extraction rate, keeping the packing weight and the dosage exactly constant always. Always pack the same and always dose the same. If your espresso pour is too slow, you simply make the grind a little more coarse to speed up the extraction rate. Now, I'm adjusting my grinder with a knob. Many grinder dosers made throughout the world feature an adjustment collar. The point is that you can adjust the extraction rate by making fine changes to the coarseness of the grind.
machine cleaning techniques.
Espresso machines have a valve behind the group head so that when you take the portafilter out, you don't spray coffee filth all over the bar. It's very logical. But this valve, as it releases the pressure built up from brewing, also takes coffee oils back up inside of the brew head with it. So you must release them by rinsing. Every time you make a shot, you turn off the pump, and you release this water. And I'm going to show you this time for demonstration purposes. When you train your barista, you show them that this is what is trapped every time you make a shot inside the brewing head. It's a bunch of coffee oils and grounds. So, to repeat, when the shot is done, every time you simply take the handle out, activate the pump for just a moment, and put the handle back. We call it rinsing, and as simple as it is, it's one of the hardest things to get my people to do in a high-volume environment. It's part of cleaning as you go. The other part of cleaning as you go, we call scrubbing. On top of every espresso machine at Vivace, we have a bunch of these little green scrubbers. They're used about every hour. We pop the basket out. You'll get tough hands doing this job. And you take a quick wipe with your green scrubber around this thing, and you rinse using your hot water jet in order to clean this basket out. Now, a couple of words about cleaning in general. Cleaning and thermal integrity work against each other. When I have this portafilter out of my machine, I'm losing heat from my head, I'm losing heat from the portafilter. So I'm very quick about cleaning as I work, and I always rinse using this jet so that I'm adding heat to the portafilter. So there's a couple of cleaning techniques we do as we work. We are dumping the dirty water out of the head, we're scrubbing the filters about every hour, and one other comment is the more coffee you make, the less cleaning your machine needs, not the other way around. As these oils sit on the metal surfaces, they become rancid through not being used. So if you're making 2 or 3 shots an hour, your machine will foul in just 40 or 50 minutes because of these oils being on the surfaces. Now, say you've just worked a line of 10 people, and you want to take and give your machine a little break. You're going to back flush it. That's as follows. Take this portafilter that's fitted with no holes. This is a coffee basket with no holes, a special kind called a blind filter. This is used to rinse this valve mechanism, and here's how you do it. Take your portafilter, stash it in the other head wide to keep it warm. Take this thing right here. Actually, let's backtrack. I'm going to take this brush first, and I'm going to clean sediment off the head and from around the gasket real quickly. Then, replacing that, I'm going to use this thing in a loose manner to rinse that gasket by running water over the edges of it. Then I'm going to back flush by locking it in place, pressurizing and releasing the pressure to blow the coffee oils out the back of the machine, out the back of the drain that have accumulated in there. You can hear it. Okay, I'll do that about twice. That's back flushing. Now, my machine is ready to sit for 5 or 10 minutes, should I need to wait for the next customer. But before we go to close-ups on cleaning it for the evening, I want one other comment to be made. This coffee, we leave the puck inside the group. It adds heat and coffee oils for the next shot. But there's a danger. If you leave this spent coffee in the group for more than 10 minutes and it's contacting this screen up here, you will foul your machine. So once again, the dosage is related to cleaning. You see how everything is interrelated. So let's take a good close look up under here, and I'll show you how to scrub for the evening procedure. During the day, coffee oils can accumulate behind the dispersion screen and on the group head. So simply take your screwdriver, which should be part of your toolkit that lives on top of your espresso machine at all times, available for the barista. Drop your dispersion screw and take out the screen. What you want to do is examine this screen and make sure that it's clean. And if it's not this clean, give it a good cleaning with your Americano jet, your hot water jet. Then use your green scrubber and polish the group head, polish around the edge of the group head. This is essential to maintain a sweet machine. Follow with your gasket brush. Replace your dispersion screen and your dispersion screw. This is a good nightly treatment to keep your group head clean and free of oils. You're going to follow with an espresso machine cleaning agent, espresso detergent, in your blind filter. Simply add espresso machine detergent to your blind filter and lock it into your group head. Activate the pump to begin the wash cycle. Now, each espresso machine detergent and espresso machine may act a little bit different. Consult the manufacturer of the machine on cleaning procedures. Find out about the espresso machine detergent that you're using. After the wash cycle is complete, make sure you get a good rinse. What we do is to rock the switch back and forth 5 or 6 times without the portafilter in place till we see the water run clear. We will back flush 5 or 6 times with the blind filter and repeat the rinsing procedure until the water runs clear. Finally, to clean your portafilters, soak them overnight in a solution of espresso machine detergent and hot water. Remove the coffee basket and make sure the handle doesn't go beneath the level of the foam.
Thermal control temperature surfing.
Well, I've discovered using a very sensitive digital thermometer fitted with a K-type bead probe. This very small tip is really a thermometer probe. It's a thermocouple called a K-type probe. We ran the probe up through a double basket right into the espresso portafilter. The resulting rig looks like this. The K-type bead probe is run through the basket so that it sits in the top of my coffee. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you because what we've learned using this very sensitive thermometer and observing the temperature of espresso machines, 20 different brands, during the brewing cycle, is that the very best of espresso machines feature a stability of brewing water temperature no better than plus or minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit. That's an 8-degree range of accuracy. It's a complete joke. I know that the coffee will respond right down to plus or minus 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit because I have a prototype machine behind me that's good for about plus or minus 2/10. And like I said at the beginning of this video, we've seen our greatest improvements as I begin to focus on temperature stability. But what can you do? All right? As a practical matter, heat exchange machines accumulate heat when they're not in use. A dedicated boiler machine may cool down when it's not in use. In either case, all espresso machines, commercial espresso machines, are designed to give you the best temperature stability when they're in continuous use. They like to be used. They like to make shot after shot, and then they narrow their own range, and they have a fairly repeatable performance, but still no better than plus or minus 4. So how can you trick your machine into better performance? It's simple. If it's been sitting for a while and you haven't made coffee for a few minutes, force about 2 ounces of hot water over the old coffee as you grind and prepare to make a new shot. This will loosen up some coffee oils and it'll add heat to the portafilter. But most importantly, it'll trick the machine into thinking it's making coffee. So you're doing this while you're grinding. Then, as you take your portafilter out, you do another very small pulse. We call this temperature surfing. You go over, you get your coffee, you pack it, you bring it back. Now, just before you put it in, one more small pulse, about 2 ounces. Then you make your shot. So to repeat, you're trying to make the machine, trick the machine into thinking it's making more shots than it is. The whole thing stabilizes in brewing water temperature if it's making coffee continuously. There's a lot of reasons why, none of which I'm going to go into in the scope of a short video. But put this thing in there just before you put it in. I mean, you activate the pump, then put it in as close to that, fire it off, and brew your shot as quickly as possible. We call it temperature surfing. This way, a heat exchange machine cools down a little bit. A dedicated boiler might come up towards its target temperature. It's a very important technique in order to achieve sweet espresso coffee. In my opinion, when espresso machine engineers can build us a machine that will hold the brewing water temperature stable to 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit for each and every espresso that we make, humanity's 5-century quest to capture all of the aromas of roasted coffee in a cup will be over. So what we have learned in our 9th year of research at Espresso Vivace is just how sensitive espresso coffee is to any variation in the brewing water temperature. So for this reason, we leave our portafilters always locked into our group head. When we make our coffee, we grind, and we're quick about it. We get it out, we get the coffee packed and back in as quickly and efficiently as possible. In addition, any ceramics that we use to serve our customers, we preheat by using this jet. In general, anything that you can do to keep the espresso in its ground or its liquid form as close to the brewing temperature as possible will aid you in creating a sweet coffee. So to succeed, to really make a sweet espresso coffee, I want to remind you before I let you go that there's a lot more to it than the techniques of the barista that you have seen. If your machines are out of adjustment or you've got stale coffee or other problems, it doesn't matter how well you pack, you're not going to get a sweet coffee. So I have written a little book, Espresso Coffee, Professional Techniques, that provides abundant detail. And I thank you very much for listening tonight, and I wish you the best of luck in your own aromatic pursuits.
Thanks for watching.